is a good question. It depends on the scale. It depends if you want to address priorities at local level, at national level, at regional level. I work for a regional organization, which is the European Commission. And of course, for us as European Commission, our priorities are essentially to assure that we have sufficient soil resources for future generations in Europe, particularly recognizing that soils is a non-renewable natural resource. This is still, for many, a questionable thing. For us is a fact. And to protect this precious resource, we need to have an EU policy. So what we are doing in Europe is essentially try to get a common policy at EU level for protecting our soils. We are working on it since some years at the European Commission. We have still to get it fully approved by the EU Council, but we're very confident that also with the help of the recently approved Global Soil Partnership in the Council in FAO, this will strongly help regional efforts for soil protection and national efforts. The most important role, I think, is that it will be a platform and a possibility for bringing together all the I would call it a coalition of the willing of the countries, but also of other stakeholders, so also regional institutions like ours, that genuinely have a will to protect soils. So the fact that it's a voluntary partnership of countries, members of FAO, of institutions, of stakeholders, hopefully also NGOs, this will give it a very, very interesting new approach to addressing soil protection through voluntary efforts. Of course, this is also very helpful in then translating this into national legislation. So we hope that the Global Soil Partnership will also generate a new impetus in developing national soil protection legislation, and hopefully for us in Europe also European soil protection legislation. I think they're highly attractive, not only for funding agencies, but by private investors as well. There's been since 2008, essentially since the famous food crisis of 2008 due to some tensions on the commodities market, a great interest and a growing interest by the investors to get good soils in their portfolios. Simply because there is recognition that soils are a finite resource. So it's a good investment because once you buy it, it can only get up in value if you protect it. And so this is mobilizing a lot of private interest. Now it's up to us as civil servants and as working for public institutions to assure that this is done in an equitable way. So we must generate awareness that soils are a common good for all of us. We all need to eat, we all need to have food. So there is definitely here quite interesting development that we need to be aware of, and I hope governments and public institutions will do something about that. The main challenge is that we are consuming our soils in a very rapid pace. So essentially, Europe is a highly industrialized areas with a very limited amount of fertile soils compared to the population and to the needs. That's why we are actually living off soils, productive soils elsewhere in the world. Actually, we are importing virtually soils because we are essentially importing food and fiber and anyway agricultural products from the rest of the world. But there is now a great awareness in the European Union to the fact that we need to protect our limited fertile resource of soils for agricultural purposes. And so the biggest challenge is probably to assure that the future urban development and infrastructure development will a little bit take more care of protecting agricultural productivity, especially in the areas which are famous for high productivity in Europe. So I just give the example of my country
Italy's highest productive area is the Po River Plain in northern Italy, which is, by the way, also the highest, there is the highest pressure from urban development in taking out these productive soils from production and using them for housing infrastructure, which is also needed, but maybe needs a different, more sustainable approach.